It's time to go live at Lucian Live 2022 in Denver, Colorado, April 10th through 13th at the Denver Convention Center. Discover the innovative solutions, transformative insights, and strong connections to help you lead through change. Register at Ellucian.com/EllucianLive and catch Elvin and I recording on site live. We can't wait to see all of you. It's time. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio here with you again, as we have now surpassed 400 episodes of this podcast. By the time this episode airs, I know I'm saying this all the time now, there might be 425. We've recorded a bunch that haven't come out yet with leaders that I don't want to divulge who they are because it's just an incredible lineup of people. It gets more incredible every single day, which is pretty hard to believe when you get through 400. There's still thousands of people in higher education that we have to interview. Elvin and I have committed to doing as many conversations as possible, which means we very rarely say no, which means that we're booked out forever at this point. Elvin told me the other day that literally I will be doing nothing else in my spare time other than podcasting. He is producing me at this point. He's my producer. I have no say in the matter. He just keeps shoving the microphone in front of my face and I keep talking. So I guess I'm good at that part. Anyway, enough about me. I'm excited here today because I have back with me a frequent co-host, a guest co-host of the EdUp Experience podcast. She's a dean at Unity College and her name is Dr. Amardeep Kalam. And there she is. Drum roll.
Hey, Joe.
How are you, Amardeep?
I am good. Thank you. Thank you for having me back. It's great to be back again.
And where are you, Amardeep?
I am on the most beautiful campus on Pineland Farms in New Gloucester in Maine, which is a 25-minute drive from Portland.
Very nice. Are you close to the water?
I am about a 15-minute drive from the water.
I was going to say, maybe I need to come up with some like snapping lobster claws or something for your next sound effect to introduce you. What's up in that part of the country? Lobster, crab, what's over there?
Lobster, crab, lighthouses, just beautiful scenery, nature, snow. Got a lot of snow last night, unexpected.
Mm-hmm. I'm from Syracuse, New York. I know a few things about snow, so nothing surprises me. That's why
one of the sound effects could be the scraper on the windshield of the car.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I got to do that to introduce you, the scraper on the windshield. I'm going to write that down right now. Speaking of writing things down, I want everybody to get ready to write things down today because I know that my guest is going to give you, no pressure, of course, the most brilliant insights you've ever had in marketing and higher education, ever, without fail, the best ever. Again, no pressure on this guest. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, Elliot Felix. He's founder of Brightspot Strategy. Elliot, what is happening?
Thanks, Joe. Amardeep, good to be here. And I grew up in Albany, New York, so I can relate to snow and scrapers. And maybe not quite as much snow as Syracuse, but we did our best.
Not quite as much, but you are familiar then with 8 months of snow, maybe just a little bit lighter because it didn't come off the lake effect snow. But you are, Elliot, you are on a roll, my friend. I'm starting to see your face everywhere. And you've just got a lot going on the, in addition to what you're doing at Brightspot, which we will talk about, but you're here as the founder of Brightspot Strategy. Level set for us. What is Brightspot? What do you do? How do you do it?
Brightspot's a higher ed strategy firm on a mission to create more engaging, equitable, and sustainable experiences for higher education, for students, for faculty, for staff, for alumni, for corporate partners. And we do it using design thinking to help people understand where they are, figure out where they want to go, and map out a way to get there, thinking about their space, their student services, their staffing, their systems, probably some other S's, but it's a kind of a holistic way of thinking about how you improve people's experiences. And we've done that for over 100 colleges and universities over the last 11 years. And a year ago, we became part of a 2,000 person or so global engineering and consulting firm called Bureau Happold. So we now have kind of all the benefits of a boutique strategy consultancy that's passionate about and knowledgeable about higher ed, with a very, very deep bench of other experts in economics, analytics, technology, sustainability. So we're having fun and helping people and learning stuff. So those are kind of three great things.
When did that take place that you merged with? Was it a merger or a partnership or with Bureau Happold?
I think given that they're 2,000 and we're 15 or so, I think it's fair to call it an acquisition.
Well, I didn't want to go there unless I needed to go there.
Yeah. I don't think, I think that's a fine term. That happened about a year ago, early 2021.
And
which is an interesting time.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time to join a larger firm coming out of COVID. While it was challenging, we had a great 2020, and we were able to help lots of institutions formally and informally through disruption, and then found a great partner to help us scale our impact and provide lots of complementary services to help more folks.
Yeah, and Amardeep, I'll pass to you in a second, but I want to ask you, Elliot, you must have been doing something right to get acquired by Bureau Happold, big company, lots of dollars, lots of influence. What do you think was separating your institution? See how many people, higher ed people, I guess it could be an institution, your firm, apart from other firms, right? Because Bureau Happold could have looked at 100 companies that do something in higher ed. And so what do you think separated out Brightspot from your competitors?
Well, I think we were a really good fit in terms of vision and culture was the first thing, because they're unlike any engineering or consulting firm I know, in that they really think about the KPIs are about people, right? So if you're an engineer, you can think about, oh, my job is to size this duct or this beam, or you can think about, my job is to let as much daylight into an office as possible, or my job is to give somebody a great view of the pitch in a stadium, or my job is to help create healthy places for people, or my job is to help address the climate crisis. And I think they're very much thinking in terms of people, which was like a great alignment for us and them. And then I think the approach we take to helping institutions transform is pretty unique, in that we are working with all these different S's. We are helping people not just with their space, but with the student services, career, admissions, libraries, technology, and then we are helping people think through how to organize and develop their staff to better deliver those services. And we're thinking about not just the physical experience of the campus, but the digital experience as well. So we're helping think about the systems. And so working at the intersection of those things gives us a pretty unique perspective. And we've been lucky to have, plus worked hard, I would say, at having some great impact.
Amazing, amazing.
Amardeep, what do you have to ask Elliot here?
Well, I was thinking, Elliot, what inspired you to go into this area? This is such a unique area of higher ed, things that we take for granted when we walk onto a campus. We want that look and feel, we want that experience, but we never actually think about it, about what goes into building that. And you touched upon the digital. My next question is going to be about that. So just tell us what did it for you?
Well, it's a great question, and I feel like I've realized three things over the, well, hopefully more than three things, but three big things that I've realized. The first was my background is in architecture and design. And I love that education. It was great for communicating, for problem solving, for creativity. Then I worked as an architect, which was also terrific. But I found something lacking in that we often didn't know enough about the people we were designing for. And the problem was not often enough well-defined. So I went to grad school at MIT, and MIT is a very interdisciplinary place. And I was able to really think more about people and academic programs and fill that gap and better understand people, and then found a place which no longer exists called DEGW, where our job was to write the design brief. So our job was to define the problem for an architect to solve. And after doing that for 5 years, I realized something else. It was a great 5 years, and got to help dozens of institutions transform a lot of libraries, business schools in particular. But I realized that space alone wasn't going to solve the problems that we were uncovering through our interviews or our surveys or our observations or our benchmarking. And that really, if you wanted to transform someone's experience, if you wanted to enable student success, if you wanted to up your research productivity, you had to think about the support services and the staffing and the systems as well. And that was the founding premise of Brightspot 11 years ago. And then I think the third thing that I realized maybe 5 years ago, as Brightspot started to focus more and more on higher education, we realized more and more of the inequity in higher education. So we really tried to focus the practice on creating more equitable experiences and doing things that help all students, but evidence-based approaches that benefit underserved students more. So things like one-stop shop service points, which have been shown to increase retention, or active learning, that both the support services for faculty and students, as well as the classrooms, which cut failure rates in half and are particularly helpful for students of color, for women in STEM, for creating more inclusive and welcoming places, supporting student projects in libraries and in innovation spaces, maker spaces, where students can find a purpose, they can find their people, they can find a career path, they can connect their courses to that career, maybe even find a mentor or an advisor or a role model along the way. So that's kind of been our journey, is thinking about and understanding people, then understanding that space can't solve all people's problems, and then understanding that there's inequity built into higher education, as there is in many systems, and what can we do to solve for that, or help solve for that.
Wow. That's my wow button. I'm just going to keep hitting it. And keep hitting it. Well said, Elliot.
Yeah. So tell me, Elliot, do you have any one quick story that really sticks out with you, where you went into this place and you made this change, which led to these amazing outcomes? Particularly, I love how you touched on the underserved students, because a lot of people don't realize all of the stuff that goes into building that equity, all of the systems that you have to change, the back-end systems and the systems that you don't even think about sometimes, like the one-stop shop that you talked about, and having been through some of those changes myself at my past institution, I can totally relate to that. So any one story, really a nice story that sticks out, that we did this and this was the outcome.
It's difficult to choose, because we've been lucky enough to help so many different institutions. But I can say for sure one of my favorite projects was working with a large public research university to redesign their advising process and the space to support it. They had they were members of the SERU survey, the Student Experience at a Research University survey that has some advising questions. And they got, maybe an average score, but they felt like, especially pre-major advising, there was a real opportunity to take a more holistic approach. And they came to us with that problem or that opportunity. And we were able to shadow students, talk to lots of advisors, talk to faculty, and help unpack and develop this kernel of an idea to take a more holistic approach, and ended up planning the space and the services and the staffing for an integrated advising center that brought together dozens of different partners, everybody from counseling and psychological services to career to student finance to study abroad, kind of all under one roof where they could share space, share services, share ideas. And I think my favorite part of that project was that it was also a way to meet students where they are, quite literally, because we put it in the library. And the idea was, on so many campuses, there's one place you go to study, and then there's another place you go to get support. And we thought, let's overlap these things. Let's blend study and support so that you take away perhaps some of you normalize getting help, you destigmatize getting help, you make the help more visible. And it's been a great success. I think student satisfaction with advising went up by about a third. And what's very interesting is the people that were very dissatisfied kind of flipped to being very satisfied when they did the next survey. And it was a great project to work on.
I love that. I love the focus. The focus on students is always important. And speaking of that focus on students, Elliot, you decided to sit down and write a book. And I think you have to be a little crazy to write a book, because it's like not an easy process. You really have to commit. I know this because I'm currently writing one, and it's like, oh gosh. So you have to be really committed, and you have to have a definition and a goal and some area that you want to affect in a positive way. And your book is entitled How to Get the Most Out of College, 127 Ways to Make Connections, Make It Work for You, and Make a Difference. How is the book going? I'm sure you can't even find a copy in the greater 48 here, because it's selling so massively, because everybody wants to get the most out of college. Parents are sending kids to college. Adults are going to college. This is something that, those tips, those little insider tips, the ways to get the most out of college, the understanding of college, which is not always transparent. Having 127 ways to get to a better decision, I think, would be important for anyone. So what possessed you to write this book, Elliot, and how are you feeling about the finished product?
I'm feeling great. It's only been out a few weeks. We published with Alinea Learning, which is a boutique academic press that's really focused on the future of higher ed. And what I really liked about Alinea is they wanted to move as fast as I did, because I'm in it for the impact. And I was thinking, how can I get this in the hands of students and families and institutions as quickly as possible? Because my thought was, well, I've worked for over 100 colleges and universities. I know how they work. I would love to share that. And Joe, you mentioned, insider tips and not always transparent. My thought was, can I share what I've learned to help students and their families make the most out of what's a pretty big decision? People are worried about it. They're concerned about it. It's complicated. And I was hoping to provide some insights, some inspiration, some information, so that people cannot see college as this obstacle course to navigate, though I get, that it can feel like one.
And we can sure make it one sometimes.
There's a bit of that happening, often with good intentions, right? Because institutions, as there's a new need, you create a new center or a new institute or a new office of such and such, and then it's great that you have that, but then people may not find their way there, or they may not know how that relates to other things. Like I worked with one university that had a writing center and a writing lab. Which do I go to?
Yikes! Good question.
So I was very much hoping to share what I've learned and to help people really like take charge and see going to college as something that they create, as a creative act, something they're making. They're not just kind of passively navigating, and that's really how to make the most of it. And it was a great process. And I have to say, I learned a ton in doing it, because I sat down to write it and I experimented with different formats and structures, actually by posting a tip a day on LinkedIn, until I started to see what was the right length, what was the right tone, what were people responding to. And then I started, referencing the studies, the evidence that we've been using at Brightspot for years, things like the Gallup-Purdue Index, or, things like the National Survey of Student Engagement, these other evidence-based approaches to improving student experience. And after maybe 30 or so tips, I realized, like, okay, I've gone through the greatest hits, and now let me do some more research and let me talk to some more people. So my favorite part of the book is that it really spotlights the research and the thinking of so many other great people. I conducted interviews with dozens of people, and inside higher ed, and they really were kind enough to share their expertise. And in many cases, a single tip on a single page is based on somebody's work over decades. So I certainly did my best to do it justice, but I think it's a great compilation of the latest thinking about the college experience.
Hey everybody, head over to www.edupexperience.com, our website, where you're going to find all of the episodes that we've recorded categorized so that you can ensure that you're spending your time listening to the podcasts that are most important to you. You're going to see the reviews of our podcasts, the shows in our network, our partners, and a section on starter episodes. If you're new to the EdUp experience, listen to those starter episodes and get a feel for how the podcast has evolved over time and our impact in the world. www.edupexperience.com. If there was one way to sum up this book, is that it? That it's the summary of how to navigate the college experience? Sum it up for the audience, and if they haven't read it, how to get the most out of college. Is that the best way to describe it, or is it, what I'm saying? Like, what's the meat? Is it, is it tips? Is it direction? Is it, how do you define those 127 ways?
Yeah, it's tips to get the most out of college by seeing college as something you create, not navigate, and doing it in a way where you connect the academics with the career, with the social aspects of college, because I think too often those are thought of as separately, and we know from all the research how important it is to connect those.
That's what I was looking at. I was hoping you would say something like that, because it's the connections between the functions and how to connect them to create that journey for yourself that makes the most sense, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where I'll tell you, like, writing the title was the hardest part of writing the book. I don't know if you're finding this. I think your title is already figured out.
Yeah,
Joe,
we did we did it a little in reverse. Yeah.
But having written the book, I then, really struggled with the title, how to distill it. I'm a pretty literal guy. And so I thought, and I'm pretty goal directed. So let me just, how to get the most out of college. That's it does what it says. It is what it says. And the subtitle is really the key message, right? Think of this is something you're making, and you're trying to make connections between ideas, to be between people, to be part of a community, to connect your classes with a career, with maybe a club you're in, and you're trying to make it work for you. You're trying to use the information that's in the book to understand how higher education is set up so that you can take advantage of all the great things that colleges and universities offer. Because if there's one thing I hear in all our consulting work, it's all the amazing things that colleges offer that enough students don't know about or feel comfortable using or take full advantage of. And finally, the last thing you're making is a difference, because that's so important to students, is applying what they're learning to make an impact on their life, in their family, in their community.
100%.
See, Armor Deep just agrees with you. She got really excited there. Thanks, Armor Deep, for saying 100%. I will say, in Armor Deep, I'm going to pass it to you for more questions, but fortunately for me and unfortunately for the two of you, this is the midway point of the EdUp Experience episode. So we're going to play a little game. And today, are you guys ready for this?
Yes.
Here we go. If you didn't hear it the first time, hit it twice. It makes me, I said this before, it makes me feel like I'm actually a game show host, which I think is my secret fantasy job. We're going to play a game called Higher Ed Word Association today, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to give you, Amardeep and Elliot, 3 words or phrases that relate to higher education. And you're going to give me the first group of thoughts that come into your head without preparation. Okay? You guys really ready? You sure?
Yep.
Here we go. Elliot, you're going to like this one. And I choose these in advance for the record. Strategic planning. Elliot.
5 goals.
5 goals. Is that what you said? 5 goals?
Yeah, all strategic plans have 5 goals. And the 5th one is usually about organizational or operational excellence to enable doing the other 4.
Amardeep, strategic planning.
5 years. You have 5 goals for 5 years.
Well, you guys are good.
Nicely done.
This is going to get harder. Elliot, competition.
Peer institutions.
I like it. Amardeep, competition.
I'm going to say learning, because you can look at the competition, see what they're doing, and take what works for you and modify it and be better.
You guys are pretty good at this game here. Last one, Elliot, marketing.
Getting the word out. Putting your best foot forward.
Amardeep, marketing.
Targeting. So drilling down right to the street to which you want to send the message, and then geofence the message.
Whoa, look at the terms coming out now. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes another episode of Higher Ed Word Association with my 2 apparent experts here on Higher Ed Word Association, Elliot and Amardeep. Thank you guys for playing. I feel like I could do a whole episode on Higher Ed Word Association. It's my new favorite game to play here on the EdUp Experience. I used to go with theme songs. What's your entrance music? I'm not going to ask you guys that because you did, but I think Higher Ed Word Association is like my new format. Like, I'm going to just blow that sucker out of the water
I love that.
with some of these episodes. Amardeep, over to you.
Okay, so Elliot, firstly, I have to say the format of your book is really nice. The tip at the top, then a little bit of research, and then the quote from the learner is just really good. So I'm going to ask you, you talked about the physical spaces, you've talked about putting the advising in the library, but we all know that now, particularly, accelerated by COVID, there's a lot of learning going on online, and there's a bigger push towards it. And online learning was supposed to be the great equalizer. And we all know that in some cases it has been, but in a lot of cases it has not been the great equalizer. So tell us about, in your work, how you see that and where you see the future of that going, particularly with the equity lens, when you look at it with the equity lens and looking at it with bringing everyone into the picture and serving all the students.
Well, I think that the on-campus experience and the online experience and the on-campus programs and services versus the on-campus programs and services, I think those are all converging. And I think they have been for a while. We've been talking, and it's maybe the word's a little bit corny, but we've been talking about phygital for a long time because things aren't physical or
Say
digital.
that again for us, Elliot.
Phygital, which
Say
is
one more time for me because I'm going to put it on loop when I put out your social media clip for this episode.
Phygital.
I really won't do that to you. For the record,
a conjunction of physical and digital, in case people, or hybrid, which is like the word of the year, if not for 2022, certainly 2021.
It has a hybrid, like you can't even define it anymore.
Everything's a hybrid.
So many different things to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, oil and vinegar salad dressing, I think, is a hybrid. You can apply it to anything.
Absolutely right.
But I think on campus and online have been converging for a long time, and it's interesting to find these signposts that maybe point to the future. And so, for instance, the fact that I think as of a couple of years ago, 2/3 of students who were fully online were enrolled within 50 miles of home. The fact that, lots of high quality online programs, especially at the graduate level, start with a face-to-face immersion. The fact that, online programs have been opening up what some call micro campuses, in like storefronts to serve online learners, to provide a touch point for student services. Maybe they have a tricky financial aid issue or something they want, or a career thing they want to talk to someone in person. There's even a new company that I'm pretty sure I learned about on this podcast that provides effectively dorms within hotels for nomadic online students. I think it's maybe the U experience.
You got it.
So I think these are interesting clues about our hybrid future. And I think that we really have to think about online and on campus together. I think it's like a false dichotomy, the idea that you have a separate part of the university that does each, I think is crazy pants, and we should be looking, each side should be looking to learn from the other, because I think there's lots of great things happening, for instance, in terms of advising or success coaching at scale online that lots of on-campus students could benefit from. So my first thought about online is that it's converging with on-campus. And my second thought is, and I posted this a couple of weeks ago, as we're sort of seeing various states mandate a return to campus, or what kind of like companies mandating a return to office, and we're seeing sometimes that's based on evidence, sometimes it's based on intuition, sometimes it's based on neither. These create these debates that to me feel a lot like the way people are talking about online learning now feels a lot like how people talk about the open office, where effectively people have in mind the worst example of an idea's implementation, and then they judge the entire idea based on that implementation, right? So they, lecturing over Zoom for 50 minutes sucks. Okay, I'm going to throw out all of online learning, forgetting that, of course, often online learning, there's a lot more instructional design that goes into it. It gives students a much greater degree of flexibility, all the benefits that we that we know. So I think the big thing that folks need to do is not judge an idea by its worst possible execution, but by the median or even the best execution, and recognize the benefits, because I don't think we're going back. I think it's very hard to take flexibility away from people once they get used to it. And I think people have, while there are certainly downsides, emergency remote teaching as a stopgap. I think people are students and faculty appreciate the flexibility to learn and teach, where and when they want to.
Right.
Keep going, Amardeep. You got another one? Because I got plenty more.
I mean, you can hop in, Joe. I was just going to ask one about change management.
Go ahead. I'm sure Elliot would like to talk about that if I know him well. I know he likes to talk about that.
Yeah. So, in this chaotic time we're going through, change management, talk about that. How can schools, because, this is a very most listened to podcast about all these things. So change management, what are some of the things to avoid, and what are some of the things you should do when, as a president or as a senior C-suite person, you're doing this change management, switching to a new system, like you said, the advising in the library, you had to change manage that, so what do you do?
Well, I think the most important part of change management is a participatory process. And our whole consulting model is built around getting better ideas by including people, and getting better implementation by enabling them to not just feel heard and not communicating about the change all the time through great newsletters and town hall meetings, but actually giving people a chance to shape their future. It may not be that they can have a hand in saying what's going to happen, but they can certainly, if not, have a hand in saying how it's going to happen. Sometimes both. So I think the number one thing is to involve people. And one of our clients joked one time that higher ed is the only place where a vote of 12-1 is a tie. And I love that quote. We embrace that part of higher ed's culture. And so we've structured our process to build consensus and basically make people feel comfortable changing because they feel heard, and because there's good research behind. I think the second thing is once you understand what the change is, to do some kind of readiness assessment. And this can take different forms, but I think the most important thing is to figure out what's actually holding people back. And then that's what you design your change management program around. You understanding the change, do a readiness assessment, where there are gaps, and then some of those gaps might be addressed through training, some of them might be addressed through communications, some of them might be addressed through pilots, a great way to test things out, give people a chance to try it out. And I guess the third thing I'll say is we love, it's like an oldie but a goodie. I think when a lot of people, they hear change management, they think John Kotter, Harvard 7 steps. We really like Everett Rogers, who wrote a book in the 50s called The Diffusion of Innovations. He's the person who coined the term early adopter, for instance. And Rogers, though he was studying the diffusion of genetically modified corn seed, created a really lasting, durable, useful framework to think about how people adopt new ideas. And he came up with a checklist that is a great thing to have right in front of you as you're doing any change initiative, because it's really the 5 things you need to hit as you're communicating. One is relative advantage. So how is this going to be better for the person who's using it? The other is compatibility. How does it relate to what I'm doing today? The other there's complexity. How can you make it easy to understand? Observability is the fourth. So how can you give people a sense of what's going to happen so they can observe it? And then the other is trialability. How can I try this out so that I can get more comfortable, or so that we can lessen the risk? So those three things, I think, are where we typically start when we're trying to help an institution change, whether it's a department or a person or a school or a college or a university.
There's a good tip for everybody to go check out. Who's the writer again, the author?
Everett Rogers, The Diffusion of Innovations.
Everybody should check that out. Elliot, well, you know this. I was going to say, of course you know. I had the pleasure of working with you in Brightspot at my last institution, who conducted basically a pretty extensive market research study, trying to identify new student markets, new programs. What else did we look at? Geographic targeting, all those types of things. So research plays a huge part in the work that you do. The research was extensive and specific. Can you talk about that and how, if someone's listening and they say, I'm going to enter into this project, and boy, they're going to just turn around something in a week. Yeah, you're going to get something really good, but Brightspot's going to take its time and it's going to do the necessary research to create a product, whether it's market research or change management, to get it right. And so research becomes a really important part of the process, right?
It does. And we think about, it's as a consultancy, things often end up in 2x2 grids, which can be limiting, but can also be useful. And we always think about research as internal and external, and qualitative and quantitative. And we're trying to hit all four boxes. So internal, that's like action research that we do, talking to people through surveys and interviews and focus groups and observations to understand what their needs are, what the future opportunities are, what their journey is like, the steps along the way, where there are highlights. We try and avoid saying bright spots because that's it's a little too self-referential. But that internal research inside the institution is one part of it, and then the external research is looking at the trends, looking at the examples, doing the benchmarking. What's the competitive landscape look like? And then you want to think about that quantitatively and qualitatively. If you can think about it objectively and subjectively, that's great too, right? Have subjective satisfaction data, but have objective transaction data. Where are people voting with their feet or their clicks, as well as how happy they are with those services or with that program or whatever it might be. So research plays a big role in what we do. And on that project, the kinds of research we were doing was understanding who are the learners, why would they want to go back to school, what do they want to study, and how do they want to learn. So sometimes the best way to approach the research is with those basic questions of who, what, why, where, how, when, how much, and that's what we tried to do for you, and
did it well.
Fun doing it. Thanks.
And the how ends up dominating. How much, how long, right? Amardeep, that can dominate sometimes.
Yep.
Well, we've come. Amardeep, you have any more questions for Elliot before I give him the final two?
No, you go, Joe.
There we go. Elliot, as you know, we like to ask our guests the final two questions on every episode of the EdUp Experience. Number one, what did we not say or ask you about Brightspot strategy? Anything you want to say, projects you have coming up, events you're attending, the website, anything at all, plug away, anything you want to say. And secondarily to that, what do you see as the future of higher education?
Well, it's been a great conversation, and we've mentioned lots of things like Brightspot and how to get the most out of college. And I think what I'll share is that we love to share what we're thinking and what we're doing. So we definitely have some upcoming conferences. We're going to be at the NASPA annual meeting in March, where we're going to be talking with a group of student affairs leaders that we kind of convened roundtables during the pandemic so they could learn from each other and better support their students and their staffs. We're going to be presenting at a conference called Tradeline in April about how to grow and support professional schools, since we do a lot of work with schools of business and engineering, computer science, architecture and design. And then we're in July, we'll be at SCUP, which is the Society of College and University Planners, where we'll be talking about some really exciting projects, creating a new robotics institute, creating an interdisciplinary science center, and also a pro bono effort we've been doing with SCUP to help campuses benchmark themselves. So they have a national survey which is out right now. So hopefully folks can sign up in the next few weeks, where you answer two kinds of questions: how much space you have, and then the changes you're contemplating, over the next year or two. And then that report is offered free to all the participating institutions, and then to others at I think a pretty nominal cost. So that's one of the ways that we like to give back and give people a sense of how they compare to peers and what their peers are thinking about. And it was interesting. Last year, we've found that about 60% of the institutions were planning to do a new campus master plan that I think was a way that a lot of institutions think about how they're going to respond to and adapt to COVID.
And the future of higher education.
Well, I'm very optimistic about the future of higher ed. I feel like there is a very tried and true, sometimes ed tech flavored view where it's higher education is broken, blah blah blah. Use this technology to fix it. And I think for its for its shortcomings, higher education is kind of like what what Winston Churchill said about democracy, right? It's the worst except for all the others. So I'm very optimistic, and I think colleges and universities are going to be remarkable and inclusive places. I think they're going to keep conducting research that has an impact, that solves real problems for real people. Things like mRNA vaccines. They're going to create learning experiences where a student can find their career path, find their life's purpose, find their life partner, and so I'm excited about that. I think there's a number of things that could go either way. I mean, we could continue to make progress on equity issues, or there could be a bifurcation of the industry into really two kinds of schools for two socioeconomic classes. I'm hopeful that that doesn't happen. There's also a question about whether we'll continue to integrate the online and the on-campus so that students and faculty have greater flexibility and choice, and take the best of both, or will they diverge? And I think there's also a question about whether or not institutions will quickly enough switch from the kind of outdated access mindset to a 21st century success mindset, and think about who their students are and how to best support them. And I'm hopeful that my book, How to Get the Most Out of College, will help a little bit in some small way on that last point, because I think so many colleges and universities are catching up to who their students are and what they need, and how they can be best inspired and supported and cared for. And while they're catching up, I'm hopeful that some information, some inspiration helps students take full advantage of all the amazing things colleges and universities offer in the meantime.
I encourage everyone to go out and pick up a copy of How to Get the Most Out of College, 127 Ways to Make Connections, Make It Work for You, and Make a Difference, with the esteemed author, Elliot Felix, founder of Brightspot Strategy, and my guest today here on the EdUp Experience podcast. Of course, also with me, my amazing guest co-host. You know her, Dr. Amardeep Kalan. She's dean at Unity College. Amardeep, thanks for being on EdUp again. There she is. Wait.
For having me, Joe.
There she is. She always has to show up with a drum roll. Amardeep, that's one thing I know about you. Well, there you have it, ladies and gents. You've just EdUp'd. It's time to go live at Lucian Live 2022 in Denver, Colorado, April 10th through 13th at the Denver Convention Center. Discover the innovative solutions, transformative insights, and strong connections to help you lead through change. Register at Ellucian.com/EllucianLive and catch Elvin and I recording on site live. We can't wait to see all of you. It's time.